Good morning, everybody. So we are holding, today is Tuesday. We're holding the third reading in the portion of Va'ata Tetzava. We are holding in the book of Exodus, chapter 28, verse number 31. You should make the robe of the ephod, make it out of blue wool. So this was the me'il. I'll show you a picture of the me'il that the Kohen Gadol wore. He actually wore this underneath the ephod that we had learned in the last 2 days. This was the me'il. The me'il is a robe. So you should make it out of completely blue wool. I saw in the picture that it was totally, completely blue wool. So Rashi says, upon which the ephod was placed its belt, klil tcheles, was totally blue without any other kind of color materially combined in it. So you see in this picture, you see the top of the ephod. It's hard to see because it was blue, like the ephod also was purple wool. So this was the ephod on top of the me'il. Its opening at the top shall be turned inwards. Saviv around the top of its opening, the borderline, and it should be the work of a weaver. It should be an opening like the opening of a coat armor. So it should not tear. You have to make a very strong opening that it should not, that ultimately shouldn't tear because it was around his neck. That opening. Its opening shall be turned inwards. The opening shall be border around it. The work of a weaver. It says it shall be opening with coat armor. It shall not be torn. Rashi says, "Pia mil shabegoiva." This is talking about the top of the robe, which was the collar. The seichai, it should be folded inwards as a Targum Uncle's kifi legava, folded inwards so that the fold should be in a border for it. It was woven, not sewn with a needle. Kifi tachara lamadnu. We learn from here that their coats of armor had an opening inwards like a coat of mail. Kafel was doubled over in the at the collar. Lo yikore, it should not be torn, because in order it should not be torn, the one who tears it, somebody tells him, if somebody tears the me'il, he did a negative commandment. Likewise, and it shows in the chayshah shall not move, and likewise you should not move from it. So all these are to tell us that if it does move, or if it is torn, somebody tears it intentionally, he didn't have it. Vashisa al shilov, the and on the bottom of this hem, you shall make pomegranates of purple wool. So here you have the pomegranates and the bells. So the one went the wrong way. Pomegranates and the bells. So pomegranate of wool and a bell of gold. And they were on the bottom of the me'il. Here you have a picture. The bottom of the me'il was the pomegranates and the golden bells. So first you should make it the bottom of the hem, you should make pomegranates of blue, purple, and crimson wool. On its bottom of the hem all around. And golden bells, and golden bells in the midst all around. Now she says they were like hollow, they were round and hollow, like a sort of a pomegranate, shaped like a hen egg. The golden bells would collapse inside them so it should ring. I said between them all, meaning that between two pomegranates, one bell was attached and suspended at the bottom of the hem of the robe. Verse 34, a golden bell and a pomegranate, a golden bell and a pomegranate. On the bottom of the hem of the robe, all around. Verse 35, and it should be upon Aaron when he serves in the Beis Hamikdash. So he will, so to say, his voice will be heard. You knew that the Kohen Gadol was in the room. When it comes to do the service, everybody heard it because the ringing of his amenim, ringing of his bells. Now Hashem, when he comes before God and he leaves, and he will not die. Rashi says, from the negative we deduce the positive. If he has them, the garments, he will not liable to death. But if he enters lacking any of his garments, if the Kohen Gadol wore 8 garments, Shmeina Begadim, he wore 8 garments, and he was, when he came and did the service in the Beis Hamikdash, he was obligated to wear all those 8 garments. And if he didn't wear those 8 garments, Chayiv Misa. Sisa alav vesisa tzitz zav tar. Also, the Kohen Gadol, one of his garments was a tzitz zav, a golden tzitz. Tzitz is what I show you right now. This was a golden tzitz. Tzitz is a show plate of pure gold. And you shall grave upon it an engraving of a seal. Kodesh Lashem. So it was written on that plate of gold, which went on his metzach, on his forehead. He would wear this on his forehead, and this was written Kodesh, holy to God. Rashi says it's like a sort of a golden plate, 2 finger breadth it's width. Not a very big plate. It was 2 finger breadth and two fingers. It's width encircling from the head, from ear to ear. So it went from here to here, around the head, 2 finger breadths. Verse 37, Santa is up still trailers. You shall place upon a cord of blue wool. Vayal metznefes, and this blue wool went over the hat. Amul pnei metznefes, it should be opposite the front side of the cap. So this is a big, not exactly what the meaning of this is. That's why you have a big Rashi over here. And basically, I'll show you a picture. So it went over his hat a little bit to the back of his head. So it was ultimately tied in the back of his head. But it's not clear exactly how this hat, this string, because there was a string that went in the middle of the tzitz and a string on the side of the tzitz. So they're all connected to the back of his head. So one went over his hat, that he wore a hat. So that's just to explain this. In elsewhere it says a place upon its cord, it's a vitul psil tchelis. That however here it's written and shall go over the cap. Where below it's written it shall be upon Aaron's forehead. A klutz solution, the tractate of the Shchitos Kochim in the Gemara, where we learn that his hair was visible between the show place and the cap, where he placed the tefillin. So he, besides wearing all these things, he had to have room on his head for his tefillin, which he wore in the weekday. Thus we learn that the cap was above the crown of his head. So your tefillin have to be by your hairline. That means that if the Kohen Gadol wore a cap and he needed to have place for his tefillin, it was not on his forehead. The forehead was where the tzitz was, with his gold plate was. So then you had to have room for the tefillin, and then for the cap. So that means that his hat went a little higher above his head. So thus we learned the cap was above on the crown of the head, and it was not too deep enough for the entire head up to the forehead to fit into it. The show place was below the cap, and the cords were in the holes and hanging on it to the 2 ends of the center. Thus, there were 6 cords in these 3 places. 1 cord on top, 1 cord on the side, and 1 cord on the opposite side. he tied the three cords, the three ends behind the nape of his neck. Thus, combination of the length of the plates and the cords and its ends encircled the crown, his hat. The middle cord, which was on his head, was tied with the ends of the two other cords that were on the side, and it passed along the surface of the width of the head from above. Thus, it was like a sort of a hat. Concerning the middle cord, it says it shall go over the hat. He would place the showplace on his head, like sort of a hat over the cap, and the middle cord would hold onto it so it would not fall. And the plate was suspended opposite his forehead. Thus, all the verses, Rashi, the Gemara says, if you take all the verses can be explained and you can understand it. Thus, all the verses are explained. The cord was on the showplace, the showplate on the cord, and the cord was on the cap. And that's how Rashi puts all these verses to fit in. It's not clear exactly. You have to take all the verses and try to figure out exactly what the Torah wants to tell us. V'haya, verse 38, V'haya al metzach Aaron, and it shall be on the forehead of Aaron. And with this tzitz, which is called a tzitz, Aaron will carry the sins of the holiness, holy things, to all the holy gifts. It shall be on his forehead continuously, as a goodwill before God. Now you have to realize that everything that the Kohen Gadol wore came to forgive something in what Jews might have done in their service to God. So now she says, V'nasa, Rashi says, number one, the expression of forgiveness. Nevertheless, does not move with apparent literal meaning that V'nasa he carries. Aaron shall indeed bear the burden of iniquity, thereby the iniquity will be removed from the holy things. What does that mean? Now she continues, to appease God for the blood and the fat of sacrifice that were offered up in a state of tumah, of uncleanness. Because a lot of people to realize that you're not allowed to bring a carbon when you're impure. What happens if you don't know that you're impure? Impurity is a spiritual thing. So there's a possibility, God forbid, a person could be impure without him knowing that he's impure. He was walking on the street, touched a dead animal without him knowledge. So he's impure. Doesn't know that he's impure. He comes to the Beis Hamikdash, he brings a carbon. Meanwhile, he's impure. And therefore, there could be a lot of sins I've done, biyodim, as we say every Yom Kippur. We ask God forgiveness in the sins that we know that we did, and the sins that we don't even know. There could be a lot in these aspects of impurity, especially impurity when I don't know that I was impure. And that's number one. So this comes to forgive, which iniquity does it bear? The iniquity of pigel, which already said, now will be acceptable. One perform a sacrifice service intended to partake in the flesh outside of designated for this sacrifice. The sacrifice is rendered pigel, meaning it's an abomination. It's consistently may be eaten, offered up. You're not allowed to bring as a carbon. The show place of the Kohen Gadol for did not make the pigel acceptable. It's not acceptable. If it's inquired in nicer leftover sacrificial flow, it's already said, will not credit. If the one who performed the sacrifice service intend to partake the flesh after its time allotted, that's nicer. It's pigel, not in the right place. Nicer is leftovers. We can't say that the iniquity of a kohen who offered up the sacrifice while unclean, for it says in the holy things, not the iniquity of those who offer them up. Consequently, does not appease except to render the sacrifice acceptable. So it's only coming to forgive if I came impure and I didn't know I was impure. It shall be on his forehead continuously. Sounding like the Kohen Gadol need to wear this tzitz 24/7. So as she says, it's impossible to say that it always be on his forehead. It was not accepted time of his service. He only wore the tzitz when he went to do the service in the Beis Hamikdash. The truth is, the Kohen Gadol was not obligated to do the service in the Beis Hamikdash besides Yom Kippur. That was the only time he was obligated to do the service in the temple. But nevertheless, if the Kohen Gadol wanted to come and do the service any day, he had the right to come and do the whole service any day he wanted to come. But he was obligated to wear the garments of the Kohen Gadol when he came and did the service. So that's what Rashi says. But it means that always make them sacrifice favorable, even when it's not on his forehead. Namely, Kohen Gadol was not ministering at the time. According to the one who says that only when it's on his forehead it appeases and made the sacrifice acceptable, or otherwise it's not appeased upon his forehead, constantly is interpreted to mean that he must touch it, the show place, while it's upon his forehead, so that he's not take his mind off of it. Meaning that he has to always remember he has the tzitz. As long as he's doing the service, he has to keep on touching, like we touched the tefillin. That's one of the reasons why we touched the tefillin, to remember that we have tefillin on our heads. The Kohen Gadol, out of all the garments that he wore, he was obligated to make sure he touched the tzitz, to remember that he's wearing this tzitz, this show plate upon his head constantly. Verse 39, and then you shall make linen tunics. You have to wear undergarments out of checker work. You'll make upon him a linen cap. He has to wear a hat. Sheish, and he has to wear va'avnet. He has to wear a stash. He has to wear a gartel. It's with Chassidim, or Jew. We find many Jews that wear a gartel when they daven. But the Kohen and the Kohen Gadol would wear a avnet, a gartel, a stash. Tasarekim, you should make it out of embroidery work. Now she says, make the tunic of boxes, all of them made of linen. So that's what the Kohen Gadol wore. Kohen Gadol wore 8 garments. A regular Kohen wore 4 garments. To the children of Aaron, you shall make tennis, you shall make a tunic. And you shall make them sashes. You shall make them a high hat. So Rashi says these are the 4 garments, no more. A tunic, like a robe, a sash, a gartel, a hat, which was the same as the cap, and the pants written below. So it's 4 garments, along like a robe, underneath boxers, a hat, and also a gartel, a sash. So there were 4 garments that the Kohen Gadol were obligated to wear, all made out of linen. That is completely white. He shall clothe Aaron and his sons, his brother. Aaron. He shall clothe Aaron, your brother, his banav and his sons. Itay with him. You have to anoint them. You have to fill their hands. He says, sanctify them. And they'll be kahanim to me. Now she says, that means you're with all these garments stated in the connection to Aaron, the choshen, the ephod, the robe, the checkerwork tunic, the cap, the sash, the soap lace, the pants. 8 garments mentioned in connection to them. So the Kohen Gadol wore 8 garments. The 4 garments connected to them. Besides their garments, you have to anoint them. What does that mean? Invest their hands. What does that mean? Means pashut. You have to teach them. You have to fill their hands. Every mention of filling of the hands is an expression of initiation. When a person begins something such as a position that he will have, that will be in possession from that day, is referred to a filling position, melesa. When appointed a person to be in charge of something, it's melesa. The ruler puts in his hand a leather glove called a ganto. Thereby he grants him authority over the matter. They call this transmission, investing, expression of filling of the hands. And here you have the checkered undergarments. You shall make them linen pants. The chasis basar cover their flesh, the flesh of their nakedness. Masnayim vad yerchesayim, they reach from the waist down to the thighs. What does that mean? That's why some find some Hasidic communities they wear the undergarments all the way down to the side of the legs. Rashi says the father and son. So we have 8 garments for the Kohen Gadol and 4 garments for the Kohen regular Kohen. Should be an Aaron and his sons. When they come to the tent of meeting, or they come to serve to the Mizbeach, the Shadas Bakedah should serve in the holy, the Beis Hamikdash. Well, the Easter oven, and they shall not be carry their sins, but Mesu, because they will die. It should be an everlasting law. She says, all these garments shall be worn by Aaron, those are appropriate for him. Well, Abanov and his sons mentioned are appropriate to them. But Mesu, what is the meaning? Ash says that when lacking the proper garments, anybody who did the service in the temple, in out of these garments, is liable for death by heaven. Hukas Elam, wherever it says an everlasting law, perpetual statute, means a decree that's in effect immediately and for future generations as well. This statute to make invalid the sacrifice of any, if any requirements is missing. So not only are they punished by death to heaven, but the person who brought the sacrifice will have to bring another sacrifice because the sacrifice was invalid. That completes the Chumash and Rashi for today. We now continue the Alter Rebbe's 29th chapter of Tanya. Alter Rebbe continues to explain the concept of, as he ended yesterday, a beautiful interpretation of what we say in davening, Shama Shanasata Bi, that the soul which you put into me, that the Eibishter put a godly soul, Tahirahi, a godly soul within my animalistic soul. And therefore, the Eibishter wanted that, God wanted that I should have the capability to to put aside my animalistic self, because in the Neshama, the godly soul is in me. It's not something that's far away from me. The Eibishter gave me this godly soul. So I should be able to break the clipper, because my godly soul is self-understood much greater than this clipper, than this covering, than this challenge. My godly soul is much greater, much more powerful than the physical, because anything physical, anything that challenges my godly soul is limited. My godly soul is unlimited. It's part of God. So how can anything challenge my godly soul? It's impossible. So it's an illusion. That's why we call a person that does a sin is a fool. It goes a moment of stupidity. Because how is it possible that anything in this world, any worldly thing, should challenge a godly concept when the worldly thing is a concept of a limitation, totally limited? While my neshama, shenasata bi, the soul that you put into me. That's why again you say by Moidani lefanech to be the shmasi. Not that the Eibishter, not that God put the soul in a distance from me. The Eibishter put the soul in me, in my nefesh, in my body, which my body, my physical body is my nefesh abahamis, is my animalistic soul. Why would God put a godly soul in this animalistic entity? Self-understood. He wanted the revelation of the godly soul. He wanted that through my free choice, I'd be able to overcome my animalistic soul. And Alter Rebbe continues this beautiful concept. And he continues with K'mayim Hillel HaZaken. As Hillel HaZaken said L'Talmidav, to his students, when he went to eat. So he wanted to give his students what's the meaning of them going to eat. Why didn't he go to the middle of learning? We're in the middle of studying. Why we're going to eat? He would say, listen, we're going to eat for one reason. We're breaking our study. We're walking away from the Gemara to do one thing. You would say we're going to eat to do a favor to the lowly poor creature. We have a lowly poor creature. It's our body. We're here learning Torah with our soul. Our soul is learning Torah, having a spiritual bliss. But we have to do chesed. When it comes to chesed, and this chesed cannot be done by somebody else. So when it comes to a mitzvah to do chesed, who am I doing chesed with? My body. My lowly body needs to have food. I have no choice. Somebody else cannot eat for me. So I have to eat because I have to push it, give, chesed, I have to show kindness. Meaning his body. Because his body was like a foreign thing to him. His essence was his soul learning Torah. So Hillel Hazaken would always tell the students, remember this. Sure, we have to go eat. We're human beings. But what is the real source of our existence? Our neshama, our learning Torah. We're learning our Torah, we're studying Torah, but we cannot forget our body. Self-understood, can't forget the poor man. So in essence, he said, there's a rich man in everybody, and there's a poor man. The rich man is his godly soul. The poor man is his body. And you have a mitzvah to show kindness to the poor man within you. And that's your body, your goof. So you have to be kind. Be kind to your body. The Mashamachila, you're going to feel it. Because why he wanted to tell him, who are you in essence? He told the students, who are you in essence? Who are we in essence? We are a godly soul. That's what we're here really for. We're here really for the godly soul. That's who we are. And that's really what we're here in the world for. So he tells his expression that he is doing a favor by giving food, for he himself has nothing other than the divine soul. It alone animates his body and flesh, in so much as the tzaddikim, the evil that they have that was in the vital soul pervading their body and flesh had been transformed to good by Hillel Hazaken. His body was nourished by the godly soul. It has been absorbed into holiness. His body has been absorbed into holiness by Hillel Hazaken, because Hillel Hazaken was a tzaddik, self-understood, and his body has become part of his soul. So his body had no issues. His body had no problems. His body was nourished by the godly soul. Now you understand what it means when Moshe Rabbeinu said, I went up to heaven, went up 3 times to heaven, one after the other. I didn't eat and I didn't drink. 40 days and 40 nights. Well, how did you survive? How did Moshe, don't try this at home. How did Moshe Rabbeinu survive 40 days? Because he survived from his godly soul. So Hillel Hazaken, in essence, even spoke of them to himself. He said, I'm going to doing a favor, my body, my outer body, because I'm a godly entity. So Moshe Rabbeinu reached up to the level of taka not eating and drinking for 40 days and 40 nights, which you cannot do that physically. You have to eat and drink in this world. Moshe Rabbeinu reached up. That's the whole machlekes in the Gemara. When Mashiach comes, will we eat and drink? I think the halacha is, we will eat and drink. But there's an argument. There's those stages will hold. The Mitzvah Mashiach comes, you won't need to eat and drink. But by a middleman like us, we want to be a Beinani. When a Beinawave is since the substance and the essence of the vital animal soul stemming from the sitrach of another side, an impurity, which pervades his blood and flesh, which became part. It became part of him. His, as we said before, by abandoning his flesh and his blood, he himself is his animal soul. Has not transformed into good. So that constitutes man himself. So he's not going to do, he's not like Hillel Azak and said, let's go do a favor for some outer body. His body is him who he is. And therefore he eats because he's got to eat. Because his body is an important thing to him. So therefore, if you can push off your eating, if I can push off my eating, and that's why the Gemara says they would push off their eating. Because if I can push off my eating, because that moment, and I say I'm not going to eat right now, I'll eat in 10 minutes, that 10 minutes is a crushing of the body. Because I need to eat. I enjoy eating. It's not like I'm just doing a favor for some poor body. I enjoy the eating that I eat because that's who I am. I enjoy food. And that's my Nefesh HaBahamis who enjoys food. I'm talking about kosher food. That's not a problem, eating kosher food. But I enjoy it. I push it out physical pleasure. I have enjoyment for it. So therefore, I need to push it off a little bit. I need to crush it. I need to break my body. I need to humble myself. I don't need to have the food right now. I can wait 10 minutes. So even though I'm going to ultimately eat it, so what's the difference if we eat it now or 10 minutes later? But that is the concept of pushing a skafia. That's the concept of a skafia. So when it comes to a mitzvah, I run to do a mitzvah. I don't wait a moment. When it comes to do a physical thing, even though it's a physical pleasure, I can push it off for a couple of moments. I don't need to do it right now. So therefore, by crushing his spirit, the Beinoni actually crushes the Sitra Achra, because you shouldn't think the Sitra Achra is something that's out of you, like some poor man. Like Hillel said, my body is some poor guy out there. My godly soul, but my body is some poor guy. We're not Hillel. We're regular Jews. That our body is the rich guy, just like the godly soul in me. My body is the rich guy. He's the guy that's important to me. He's important to me, and the food that he eats, the pleasure that he receives is important to him. And you cannot deny it. You cannot say, so, I'm a tzaddik. I'm not. So therefore, the pleasures of the world are important to me. I just have to scafia. I need to subjugate it. I need to push it off a little bit. I need to humble it. That's it. I'm not going to transform it. I'm not becoming a tzaddik, because even if I push it off, even if I subjugate it, I control it, doesn't mean it is gone. It is right there because that's who I am. I need to have pleasures in life, or else I'll be a miserable individual. That's why a person gets sick. They get miserable. Why do they get miserable? Because they can't have pleasure. It's a simple thing. Tzaddikim, righteous people, receive pain with love. They don't get miserable or nothing because they know that their life is a godly life. We do get miserable. When things don't go exactly like we wanted, we get miserable. We get depressed. We start falling apart. Why? Because these things are important. Why? Because that's who I am. I'm a human being that has physical needs. No, so that's why you need to ultimately work on this. You might not get rid of it, it's sapcha. You might not transform yourself because you're not going to be a tzaddik. But a Beinoni should have the concept of a skafia. Skafia means control, self-control, subjugation, to put something down from time to time, to put it in its right place. Taka, I need it, and I'm going to get it. It doesn't need to be now. I'll push it off for a little while. I will not need it totally. I will break myself from this clipper. And I should realize that if I do that, you might think, so what? What's the big deal? So therefore, Chassidus tells you the opposite. It is a big deal. Because by controlling this and by subjugating myself, by pushing it off, by humbling myself to my godly soul, Pashit, I'm breaking Klippa in this world. And not only breaking Klippa, I'm not only breaking the evil in this world, I'm revealing godliness in the world. Because I'm revealing my godly soul, Pashit, my own godly soul, and I'm revealing, actually, the Zohar says, there's a revelation Lamaila. There's a revelation above. So that's in general what Chassidus teaches us, that also that the concept of that the joy I should have when I do a mitzvah. That when a Jew does a mitzvah, he should have unlimited joy, unbelievable joy. The Gemara says the reason why the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed because I didn't serve God in joy, with joy. That means I did the mitzvah. I did the mitzvah, but I didn't do it with simcha. I didn't do it with the joy. Because we should realize that when we do a mitzvah, it's not only we're doing the command of God. As Chassidus tells us, we say in every mitzvah, Asher. Asher, usually Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam. Asher kiddushanu. Asher is usually translated as who's commanded us. Asher kiddushanu, who sanctified us. But also the word Asher comes from the word Ashrei. Oisher. This is a great gift that the Eibishter gave me. I should be, every mitzvah I do, I should say Ashrei. Ashrei, to praise that we can do this mitzvah. Because by this mitzvah that we do, we're not just doing an obligation. By this mitzvah, we're revealing a godliness in the world that even in Gan Eden is not revealed. Even the highest levels of Gan Eden, of paradise, when I do a mitzvah in this world, the light of God as revealed in this world is higher than even the lights of Gan Eden, the Elyon, the lights of Gan Eden in the highest Gan Eden that can be. And that's why the Mishnah says, Yafa sha'achas b'tshuva ma'aseh be'elam hazeh mikol chaya elam haba. It's greater that one mitzvah I do in this world than all the life in Gan Eden, than all the life in the world to come of Gan Eden. Because the revelation of my mitzvah that I do in this world is a revelation of godliness that's above all worlds. And so too, the Zohar writes, if you understand a mitzvah, that's why you should be joyful to do a mitzvah. So too, when you subjugate yourself, when you break your sitra achra, when you push off my animalistic soul a little bit, I'm not transferring my animalistic soul, I push it off. I skafia. I subjugate my animalistic, I push it off. I control it. I tell it, don't worry, we'll do it later. That push off. The revelation of God is revealed in this world, in all worlds equal, because it's a revelation that's Sefer Kalam, and it's a revelation, an infinite revelation to all the worlds. That completes the Tanya of the day. Beautiful teaching of Tanya. Today is the 11th day of the month, in the month of first Adar Rishon, which is chapter 60 to chapter 65. Chapter 60, chapter 65. And you'll do the chitas of the day. Nothing better than to do the chitas of the day. Wish you all a wonderful and beautiful day. Mitzshem, see you tomorrow, 8 o'clock. We'll continue to learn the chitas of the day. And also invite you all tonight at 7:30. We're going to have a JLI class, advice of the Rebbe. Everybody's welcome to come, Chabad or on Zoom. Much better at Chabad. A lot of beautiful videos that are shown in this video. It's hard to show it on Zoom. And I wish you all a wonderful and beautiful, happy, healthy day.